listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast with your host, Andy Plimer. Bringing you up-to-date coaching concepts from the world of rugby. Sharing ideas to make the game better.
All right, welcome to episode number 76 of the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. I'm your host, Andy Plimer, and joining me today is Beau Robinson. Beau is a former professional rugby player who started out his career in rugby league with the Bulldogs under-20s. He then went on to the Waratahs Academy and senior side for 3 years, which included a Super Rugby final in 2008, before moving to Italy to play. After that, he moved to Brisbane, played club rugby, worked in a bar, got picked up by the Reds and went on to win a Super Rugby title in 2011 and a Wallabies cap. He also had 2 seasons with the Harlequins in the UK and is now working as a business and leadership coach. It's a pleasure to have him on the show, so welcome, Beau.
Thanks, Andrew. Excited to be on here.
Yeah, nice, mate. Good to chat. This is actually the first time I've had a chat with like an ex-player who's not in the professional coaching realm or anything like that. So I'm really looking forward to get that kind of player perspective, because I think that's a missing piece for coaches that they can really kind of tap into. So excited for the chat.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, all right. So touch on the backstory. Pretty interesting, going to rugby league and then into union. How'd that work? And tell us a little bit about it.
Mate. So I went to boarding school in Bathurst, which is about 2.5, 3 hours west of Sydney in country New South Wales, and about 2 hours from where I live in Dubbo. And was initially going to go join the army. Actually, I wanted to go join the army, and then had a bit of a breakout year in my final year of school and got selected for Australian schoolboys, and then there was a bit of interest there from club rugby teams in Sydney, but also, as you said, some of the NRL teams and playing in their 20 squad. So the Bulldogs showed interest, and I'd never really played league. I played a few games, but I'd played soccer up until 14 or 15, and then went down and started playing rugby and thought, that's probably a good opportunity, and just really liked what they were sort of offering in terms of their training schedule, and the fact that it was probably a bit more aligned with the actual first grade team and whatnot. So I did that. Mate, that's how I got into the league. I had the 1 year there, lived in Belmore in Sydney, which was a bit of an experience coming from the country. Yeah. But I enjoyed it and found it very beneficial, the experience in general.
And had that then lead into the Waratahs?
So the Bulldogs were happy to re-sign me, but I just wasn't. A lot of my friends had moved down to Sydney, and they were all pretty much living on the beaches, either Coogee, the Randwick area, a few of them playing there, a few in the eastern suburbs with Bondi and that, and then a few over in Manly. And I was really missing them, because with the rugby league, you play generally on the Friday night, or a lot of the games are on the Sunday, and so I didn't really. And I sort of made friends at the Bulldogs, but definitely, a lot of the guys who moved down to Sydney are blokes that I'd been at boarding school with, so we were very, close friends. And I just decided that I wasn't necessarily enjoying life so much. I love league, love playing the game. I still watch it a fair bit of the time. And, just went, right, I've got to do what's going to make me happier. So, ended up signing with the Waratahs in the academy there and joining Northern Suburbs in Sydney.
Right. And from that... ended up playing like a Super Rugby final. Was that against the Crusaders? I think I remember that one. It wasn't a good day.
No, it wasn't.
It was a rough one,
Yeah, I signed a 2-year deal with the academy, but after the first year, I got upgraded and signed a 3-year deal with the full-time squad.
Right.
2007, I played 9 games.
Yeah.
2008, played 12, and as you mentioned, in Super Rugby semi-final and final, we lost to the Crusaders, and then the following year didn't play anything.
Right, and so it's really cool. Like where you went from there, you ended up going over to Italy to play, and you were like, when we'll setting the interview up, you said it was like third tier Italy rugby, which sounds pretty like incredible. It must have been a great lifestyle change, but from going from Super Rugby to third grade Italy or third division Italy Italian rugby, what was that experience like?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say it was necessarily a good lifestyle. Like, we were getting paid chips, sort of just enough to sort of live, and then a little bit of spending money for some very budget travelling sort of thing with the Ryanair and staying at the backpackers and whatnot. And that was only for a couple of weekends. So, but like the actual cultural experience was, really enjoyed that.
It's probably more what I meant there, instead of lifestyle.
Yeah, I just don't want people to think that living it up in Italy. It's definitely one of the case, and the quality of rugby would be pretty ordinary, and that's probably being kind. So it was, I genuinely believe the competition out here in Dubbo at the moment is probably better than the one I played with in Italy, and it was quite frustrating. The coaches, not even old school mentality, but they were teachers and whatnot. And I'd been, the year before, mate, I'd had Les Kiss as a defence coach, Scott Wise there, and then I was going back, a long way. So that was quite frustrating.
Yeah, well, so that's like to go from that, and then you move back, and you told me like you're a garbo for a while there, which for non-Australian listeners is a garbage collector, which that's pretty old school rugby league, 70s 80s training methods there. And then you were working in a bar, and you played NRC too when you moved back to Brisbane. Is that right?
So I moved back to Sydney and was working as a garbo, and then I ended up moving up to Brizzy to just train with the Reds up there. So I wasn't getting paid. I just got an opportunity to go and train in the pre-season for 2011, and so I was working in a pub Wednesday, Friday night, and Saturday night sort of thing. So putting in shifts there, but that's when I went up there and did that, and I wasn't actually contracted with the Reds. Had a clause in the contract or the agreement, which Rupa had, that if you played, Rupa being the Rugby Union Players Association, if you played 5 games, you got an automatic contract, which was a $52,000 contract pro rata. So it was, not massive money, but it was security.
Yeah. And so I'm just thinking about that, like, you go from professional rugby with the Tars, and then you're over in Italy, and then you kind of trying to get your way back in. Who was some of the main kind of influences in that time, like to really kind of keep you pushing forward, and like help you like try to achieve, like, because obviously you're trying to get back into professional rugby, and who were some of the people who helped you in that time?
Yeah, so when I actually went back to Sydney, I was at a change club by this stage and had gone to the Warringah Rats, and I think I was captain 2010. Yeah. And so there wasn't, like, that's the only access I had there was the coaches at the time there. So no professional coaches, and I was fortunate that I did have Semi Harris, who played at the Waratahs with 2 stints and had gone to rugby league, and he was looking to get into that professional coaching area, and he was working in the city as well, and I'd played with him as well, so that was pretty handy having that. And he's now at the Rico Black Rams. I'm pretty sure he's still there. So no one necessarily in that period of time when I'd come back to Australia. But before that, I was quite fortunate, even when I went to the Waratahs, I was pretty raw as a player. Didn't necessarily know a heap about the game and understanding the game. Could sort of see it, but didn't necessarily understand it. And, I had some good coaches there, such as Greg Mumm, Shannon Fraser, who both went on to assist Fiji, Joe Barricade, who did some stuff with the Force and Ulster. And then when you got to up to that professional, the next level, when I was with the full-time team, obviously Ewan McKenzie, who was the head coach there, loved working with Les Kiss, who was defensive coach and done a fair bit over in Ireland. Todd Loudon, who was with the Bulls just before he came back to the Waratahs. Who else was there? Scotty Wisemantle, as I said. Enjoyed Scotty Wisemantle. He's a good bloke. And I don't think, now that I do business coaching and leadership coaching, they didn't necessarily push me because I think I wanted to, I was a highly motivated individual, but they were able to get the most out of me, if that makes sense. I didn't need to be told to, go and do these extras. Like, I would sit there and proactively go, right, what do I need to do? What can you tell me that I need to do? It was interesting. I read a book a couple of months ago, The Alter Ego Effect. I can't remember the author of it. And he's just talking, he's a a performance coach. Actually talking about the fact that he doesn't touch motivation. That if people aren't motivated, that's not his job to get them motivated. And I thought that pretty spot on, I find that myself.
Yeah, and you hear Steve Hansen talk about that too. It's not his job to motivate the players, right?
No, create an environment where they can excel.
Absolutely. And who of those experiences, the coaches you mentioned there, what were some of the things they did to create that environment where you can excel? What were some of their strategies that you're reflecting back?
Investing the time, I think. Quite clear on what they wanted and expected, but also good blokes.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to come to train and not be a good bloke and get people to like you and play for you, and then you go away. And, you know what I mean? You've just got to be a genuine person that people want to actually get along with and not be a dickhead. And that's not to say, everyone's your best friend and whatnot, but you respect them and you like them. So I suppose investing that time that I give you the feedback, that's what I really like. And some of those things that I did like about them were their actual, their philosophies are a bit around rugby too.
What were some of those examples?
Oh, I really love Les Kiss's defence when we were at the Tars there. It was like a very aggressive, very physical, with more of a focus on the dominant tackles as opposed to necessarily the breakdown, which I really enjoyed. Yeah. And Toddy Loudon was pretty good. He was his focus on actually playing rugby. He really wanted to develop our skills and play attacking rugby, which was good. Joe Barragat was good, just especially from that number 7 perspective and teaching me around what I should be looking for and doing as a number 7, because I said I'd gone away to league as well, so I had never had really access to those coaches who were able to teach us that sort of stuff.
Yeah, cool. And it sounds like having kind of a clear, not only having a clear philosophy and principles, but being able to articulate that to the players is pretty important in that area.
Yeah, articulate that and being able to give you time, be willing to give you time. If you want to do that, it's not always an easy case. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's a good point there too. So it's a bit of a fairy tale story, really. When you think about it, you ended up winning not you winning it personally, but as part of the Reds in 2011, winning the Super Rugby title. That's been pretty heavily talked about. Not just that 2011 season, but the build up to it the previous years. What do you think from being hands on and involved in that? What were some of the key things that the coaching staff really got right on field, off field with that playing group?
Yeah, I think they were quite clear on what they wanted to play by the sounds of it. Again, I don't know what the other coaches were like within that. They were they were willing to make some tough decisions. Like there was a bit of a turnover there in players, right. And they were looking for people that were really willing to work hard. I think there was no complacency there, and they were willing to give blokes opportunities. So there were plenty of young guys there, especially the year before I got there, that got their opportunity, not necessarily because they were highest up the pecking order, but because they were, training well and performing. So I think as soon as you do that, that builds a lot of respect too, and people, changes the culture that it's not just you're not entitled to it, you've actually got to earn that, and that's again from. I'm not being there, but that's what the other boys were saying. Instilled a couple of things. Like I remember, the boys saying that in that first year when Ewan got there, if you came into the change room, you had to go around and shake everyone's hand, build that up.
Nice.
Yeah. But I think, as I said, giving that honest feedback and belief to blokes that they could play and they would get selected if they perform, definitely built competition within the squad.
Yeah, and it's like. I'm a massive fan of Ewan McKenzie. What were your kind of big kind of light bulb moments working under him as a player? What were some of the things that he really kind of got going with the team? And one of the things that stands out for me as well is like his ability to coach teams to beat Kiwi teams. He's had a huge amount of success there. Touching on a few of those points, what were some of the things that stand out for you for Link?
I think Link is his ability to get respect from people. He's not a social butterfly.
Yeah.
He's very much an introvert who doesn't necessarily like to go out, will happily go away and spend time on his own and whatnot. So there's this perception that maybe as leaders and head coach you have to sit there and get along and, socialise with everyone and make them feel like $1 million, whereas I think he just genuinely gave you the respect, the time of day, honest feedback and cared to see how things were going. So I think that was, one of the biggest aspects of him. Humility, he wouldn't necessarily have all the answers. Pretty big on standards and expectations. Obviously, if you want to be at the top, you've got to have pretty high standards and expectations. So that was another thing, and the use of his coaches too. We had some games there where we'd really change up the tactics, and that was hugely important too, getting us to believe in those tactics while we would be doing those. And
how was that kind of rolled out? Like, was that like in 15v15 kind of scenarios that you'd be doing that on field?
Yeah, it might be reviewing, identifying areas what we thought we could capitalise on against the opposition. Some weaknesses that they might have identified. The coaches style generally reviewing the opposition 2 or 3 weeks in advance.
Yeah.
So they almost have it set up the week before, and you maybe see a little bit from their last game, but there's not necessarily a great deal of change for teams week to week. So when we talk through that. It might be the use of the whiteboard maybe, or, a PowerPoint, go through, those visuals, obviously auditory when we're in there, then going out there and we might walk through that, discuss it a little bit more, maybe on the Monday or the Tuesday and try and execute that maybe in the Tuesday team run or definitely on the Thursday.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. And now that you've been out of the game for a while, reflecting back, I know we were talking about this earlier. This goes out mostly to grassroots coaches who are just trying to get better every day and try to help their athletes. What would be like as a player coming out of your career? Would you like to, if you could go back and say, I wish I'd had some assistance in this or some support in these areas, or you even touched on that maybe, the onus is also on the players a little bit as well. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think now that I've stepped away, I'm probably doing a bit more of the theory side of leadership and whatnot. The importance of understanding the different personality types and how to connect and communicate with those different people that are in your team.
Yeah.
And the genuine, again, like it's, as a leader, you've got to be willing to invest time in developing those relationships. And that can be one of the hardest things I find as a part-time coach is that, with our training, we might rock up at, training starts at 6:30, blokes might rock up at 6:15, finish at 8, and they might be out of there at 8:10.
Yeah.
Building those connections there can be quite tough, whereas that's obviously a lot easier when it's your full-time gig. So I reckon, coaches probably could invest more time, especially in the leadership group. Because, that's your best return on money investment and investment in money, time and energy for me. I think if you can, get the most out of them, then it has a knock-on, a flow-on effect to the rest of the squad.
Yeah, agreed. And on my podcast, one of my first, I think it was episode 8, I had Ray McLean on. So I had him on. I know Ewan worked with him at the Waratahs and possibly at the Reds as well. And
no, he was at the Tars when I was there too.
Oh, right. So for me, speaking to him, it was a bit of a kind of rock star moment. I've been following, I've read all his books and following the processes that he does and adapting them to my environment, my coaching environment. When you talk leadership groups, I immediately think of that. What were your experiences with Ray and the techniques that leading teams use?
Yeah, I didn't have a heap to do with Ray. We did a bit in 2007, and it was my first exposure to it. It was quite interesting. I was like, wow, and it was it's very structured and manufactured. So I say to teams and leaders that there's 2 ways to grow or enhance your culture, you know what I mean? And that sometimes it just happens organically.
Yeah.
That you just, you walk into the right environment, it's just the right people there at the right time, and sometimes you sort of got to make that happen. So, I really enjoyed it because obviously that was the manufactured side a bit more. There was a real structure around it.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to see what we were doing there, and what was all that about. I wish I could remember more from that time actually, but it was what I really liked about it, and I think why Ewan probably was a big fan of it is it was being honest with each other and saying, right, what do we expect from each other? Often people fear giving honest feedback, but you simply can't be the best that you want to be or reach your potential if there's not that culture or that environment of giving honest feedback to each other and making sure that you are, demanding expectations that are, bloody high of each other. It's not possible. I've done, a fair bit of interviewing with people from high-performance teams, especially, obviously the sporting background, but the military and the police force, the best of the best. And the same thing, they're just like, you've got to be able to identify the areas that you need to improve on. Yeah. Bloody spot on, isn't it? Whereas that doesn't necessarily happen in the general community, the civilian community.
No, agreed. And I think what I've found from using raised methods and adapting them is most of the players actually want it. They want that feedback. They want that review, and they want that critique, as long as it's delivered in a way that's not too damaging, and that there's and one of the things he talks about in his peer review is that there's always got to be here's what you're doing really well, but here's something you need to work on. So it's a bit of both worlds. But I find most of the players, they want that feedback.
Yeah, and if they don't, then they usually, if you create that culture that they don't like that, then you'll weed them out pretty quickly anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there are some people we're talking about humility. For humility to be effective, or the whole concept of humility is admitting that you're not perfect in everything. You've got plenty of areas to work on. So, you've got to have people that. And as you said, you've got to be quite clear on what they do need to improve on, but how do you deliver that? And I say you've got two approaches depending on the type of person who it is that you're dealing with. You either build them up and then smack them down, or smack them down and then build them up. Which one way you're going to deliver it first, sort of thing? Are you going to give them the good news, what they're doing well, and then what they need to work on, or the other way around? Yeah. Again, you've got to be able to read that, which person's going to get the most of that, or which is going to have the best effect.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I've gotten that wrong plenty of times, and no doubt, that's part of it. And you always learn from that. And I think that's a huge challenge of coaching. You're not coaching robots; you're coaching people, and we're complex organisms. And being able to try and work out, what kind of feedback works for some and others is a big challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, you're facing that challenge too. I had a quick look on your LinkedIn profile. You're director of rugby at Dubbo Rugby Club. That's awesome. Grassroots as it comes, and back to your original stomping ground and everything like that. Can you tell us a bit about that role, and what have been some of the highs and lows of those experiences?
I moved back start of last year to Dubbo from the UK, so 1st of January 2018. And my role, I sort of implemented that role, director of rugby. So we've got a first grade, a second grade, a Colts, and a ladies. And the ladies, we haven't had a ladies team for a while, so we want to get that happening, because we've identified that there's going to be significant growth in the women's game. Well, there has been, and there's going to continue to be that. And mine sort of oversees a bit more everything, and I suppose that's just to ensure that you're not investing just solely your time and energy into the top grade team. I don't think that's a sustainable approach if you want long-term success. So I there get able to connect with the Colts, the second graders and whatnot, and so far that's been pretty beneficial in terms of getting those blokes engaged with myself and the other coaches, but more so with each other. We do a lot of stuff as a club, try to implement a few things such as different coaches just maybe running drills and then rotating the players through so that they're all exposed to different coaches. The first graders getting coached at times by the Colts coaches, and the Colts are getting coached by the first graders. It's good for them to have that exposure, I believe, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And are you what kind of director of rugby are you? Are you more overseeing that, or are you doing some on-field coaching yourself?
A little bit, on-field coaching, probably more than I'd like to, but also I am quite passionate and whatnot, and with that experience, where I've had access to some of the world's best coaches, trying to incorporate or implement some of the things that I've learnt from them over the years. But no, I'm enjoying it. I try to stick out of the drills as much as I can when I do get other coaches running those. Often I'll go and if there's a new drill, or I'm like, right, I think we need to focus on this, I might go and start that for a week or two and then step away and get someone else try and take that over. Just again, I think the restrictions with time and being able to sit down with your assistant coaches and go, right, this is what this should look like, and bang, bang, bang. We're all busy people, so it can be quite hard to access all of them throughout the week.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be one of the challenges too, coming from that professional environment into the amateur environment. No doubt that's one of many challenges that you're seeing. Okay, this is not the Harlequins, this is not the Reds. How's that going?
Yeah, that was a big learning curve. Sitting there going, right, we've got these lineouts that I want to bring in by the end of the season for these different reasons, and wow, we got through about a quarter or a third of them just because you haven't had the pre-season. Like last year we started pre-season at the end of January after Australia Day on the 26th of Jan. This year we started a bit early, but you don't have a November, December. You've only got 2 sessions a week.
Yeah.
As opposed to what in pre-season it's 6 or 8 at the Reds. Blokes are not always there either. Dubbo is it's a very big service city too, so there's often the tradies are away they might be out of town all week because they're servicing a town that's 400 or 500 k's away. And then the agribusiness guys are the same thing. They're always away, and that we've got a large contingent of that. So that can be quite frustrating getting all of those guys there. But it is what it is too, sort of things.
Yeah.
Being able to adapt to that and modify training and probably the expectations around what you can get out of them too.
For sure. And what have been some of the ways that you've adapted and overcome those situations that you feel are working?
Ensuring that everyone in the club has the same cause.
Yeah.
I think that's been a big one, that if someone goes away, that they can come back in the second grade and work their way up, and we can get second graders. It seems pretty obvious, but it wasn't necessarily always happening before. As I said, making sure that we are doing stuff as a club to develop those relationships and those connections amongst the club. Making sure that we've all got the one session plan, so everyone is doing similar things at the same time, so we can monitor and manage that too. Making sure that we're all training on the same training field. Things that sound pretty basic, but that's what we've had to do there to ensure that. And I try to do, probably haven't been doing as much this year, but last year especially, when we are teaching people things using the VAK, that visual audio kinesthetic, so explaining what it is in terms of whether it be a new pattern, then going through that on the whiteboard, whether it be using the markers or I use magnets often and try and put that on a layout of a field and then walking through that a couple of times, then actually stepping it up. That's been beneficial, and we've invested very little time this year in terms of our patterns and our systems, but because we'd put so much time and effort in it last year, we haven't had to, even though there's still been a massive turnover of players. They actually, we've had more players come in or turn over than we've been able to retain last year as a percentage, yet our systems and our structures are a lot better than what they were last year, because without doing as much work, because those who understood it have been able to then go and educate the others.
Yeah, that's a good message there too. I always say to my players, I'm not the only coach here. I've got 30 coaches here, and I'm just one of them. So everyone needs to be a coach, and you can't manage every situation, and you're not going to be on the field with them. So that's key.
Yeah, you got to take ownership and just be able to adapt on the field. That's one of the hardest things in terms of the coaching, is that if you are going to have the structures and systems, is that making sure that everyone's preaching or coaching the correct structure or system, if that makes sense. Even last night there was a little bit of an issue there where slight details sometimes, but they can be so crucial in terms of the effectiveness of a certain play or pattern or whatever it may be. Making sure, again, we're talking about time. A lot of the coaches might rock up there at 5 past 10 past 6, getting them to understand how it should be so they can go out and coach it. That's probably been one of the biggest challenges for me too.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, cool. Well, like I mentioned in the introduction, your main area of work is in business and leadership coaching. What's a bit of a general description of what you're doing and how you got into that role, and some of the groups you're working with and those kind of things?
Yeah, so I studied a Bachelor of Business throughout my rugby career, and that took me 10 years to finish, and I'm pretty proud of that achievement.
Absolutely.
The fact that it did take me that long, and during that time I was living in obviously Australia, New Zealand, Italy, Poland and the UK, so it hasn't always been easy, so when I had the year out as a garbo, I was like, I hadn't finished my degree, obviously, and I'm sitting there going, right, what do I want to actually do post my rugby career? And obviously, a Bachelor of Business is just a Bachelor of Business. And it wasn't until sort of at the end of the career that I sort of came across the business coaching and joined the company Action Coach, which is one of the biggest business coaching companies in the world. And then I do a lot of as I said, that leadership stuff, having that experience with those high performance teams, and seeing what makes them successful or not successful. When I was at the Waratahs, in my first year, we went from second, then up to second last to second the following year, and I think the year before had come fourth, maybe second before that. Why is that happening? Go to the Reds, and they'd been pretty average, and they fifth before I got there first that year, and then gradually going down again. So yeah, it's just a natural progression there, moving into that space in terms of the leadership and culture stuff.
And what are some of the groups you're working with? Are you working with businesses, sporting teams? You mentioned the military as well.
No, I don't work with the military. I'm just quite fortunate that I've had good mates and family that have been in some of those, the special services and whatnot, and been able to talk leadership and culture with those guys. So mainly, businesses, obviously decent sized teams there, not for profits, government organisations, banks, a few of those sorts of things.
Yeah, cool. And I've been tuning into your little video blogs that you're doing on your LinkedIn page. There's some gold nuggets in some of those. I was having a bit of a look through before the interview. Couple of things that resonated with me was one was your last one that you put out was Team Before Your Clients, where you talked about a business that let go of a client because of the issues they were creating within that team. That resonated with me from a coaching perspective. That's so applicable to some roles you might have to do as a coach to support your team. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that experience was?
Yeah, that one, the old saying, the client or the customer is always right. Like I definitely don't agree with that. When you go into bat for your team, and you see this especially with the professional sports because they're obviously copying a lot more scrutiny than just the amateur teams, but the coaches will often get quite defensive of that. Yeah. And they won't sit there. The smart ones, the good ones, will be quite tactical with what their responses are to the media. So they might sit there, and sometimes they will come out and, have a go at their team or individuals. Then other times they'll sit down and they'll be quite defensive, but or I've seen where they'll go into the change room and they will call you out on certain things too. So, and when you go into bat for your team, because especially if the criticism is unjustified or you don't believe it's necessary, then what that does is build more trust that you actually not just going to sit there and let anyone just attack your team, because at the end of the day you are a leader. So that's what happened in that instance. This client was just kept going at this team member, and the leader, the boss, didn't think it was justified. So what they did there, got rid of the client, and then again, as I said, that builds up that trust and relationship with the team member and the leader, and they came up and thanked them and said that was I really appreciate that. It shows that you genuinely care about people.
Absolutely.
That they're not necessarily a number, and that's one of the issues that I believe that coaches probably underestimate the impact of. Anyone can go and put in decent tactics and strategies, but that's not what makes a good coach. It's the ability to get those people to execute those strategies and tactics. And, as I said, you've got to build up that connection with those team members.
Yeah. I see Michael Checker doing that in interviews, where he'll absolutely back his. Eddie Jones does it too, and I think absolutely, like if you're a player and you're hearing that, you're on board straight away.
Yeah. whilst still coming in there and cracking the whip when you
behind closed doors, of course, and no, great. And the other one I'll touch on was speaking about two coaches who are probably pretty good at this, having a message that's really clear and direct, and how important that is to a team. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's happened to me a few times, when I was playing, where coaches that either give you some feedback, and like me being pretty direct, I'd go, what exactly do you mean by that? But other players, and I'd say, can you just, tell me exactly what you're talking about, or give me an example. Whereas other players might walk out and be like, I think they said that they want me to keep improving on this. And, that might not necessarily have been the message of the confusion, because the coaches maybe, doesn't have it in them to be quite direct and be quite clear with that feedback. And that's what we talked about. We said that's so important. So there's that clarity. And I use the terminology, communication leads to clarity. And when you've got clarity, then you've got confidence. So if you sit there, with that communication, the player has clarity on what they need to do to get back in the team or improve, then they can confidently go and do that if they want to. And as I said, sometimes they don't want to hurt people's opinions, but they miss the message that they're trying to give. And then other times too, they don't have the balls to actually tell you what it is that you need to improve on, and they get caught out there. And as soon as you do that, when you're not honest and upfront with your player, and you get caught out doing that, you've lost them. You've lost the trust, you've lost the respect, and it's pretty hard to come back from there. And I haven't seen any coaches that I can think of do that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good message, and definitely important to have that trust and integrity, that your players feel that what you're telling them is what you're meaning.
Yeah, Sir Alex Ferguson, it is more important to be respected than liked.
No.
Spot on,
yeah, pretty accurate, yeah. And embarking on this leadership and coaching work that you've been doing, what's been some of the real big learnings for you in this kind of short period of time that you've been doing it?
I suppose, again, just working on myself. Like, the best thing about this is that you're sitting there learning about, first and foremost, what I have to do to improve and change. You sit there preaching, and we're talking about humility. Like, I am, definitely know I'm going to be a much better leader in the future than what I am now, and that's what I'm excited. I'm sitting there changing, and people go to me, geez, you've changed since last year or last couple of months, and being able to reflect and be honest with myself and go, right, I stuffed up, as you said, like I didn't do that right, I didn't communicate that properly, or could have approached that a lot better. I've still got to work on my patience and my delivery when I am frustrated or angry and those sorts of things. But then also, getting those people around you to also understand that, hey, no, sometimes I am being frustrated and angry, and I'm doing that with the purpose too. So don't worry about that. Sometimes it's perception that leaders have to just be friendly and lovey-dovey. I do a lot of intelligence stuff these days, and people have this misunderstanding that emotional intelligence is all about just getting in a group and hugging each other when that's okay. It's knowing when to crack the whip, but also when to put, and someone to show some empathy.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And you got a book coming out. That's pretty awesome. How 10 years ago would you ever thought you'd be an author? What's happening there?
I don't know. I did start to think about it at the end of my career, and pretty excited about it. Going to hopefully appoint an editor in the next couple of weeks, up to about 75,000 words. So I'll probably chop off that, and it's just about what business leaders can learn about success. The stages and traits required to be successful are applicable to any industry or field. You've got to have goals, you've got to have plans, you've got to be willing to make sacrifices, you've got to be determined, you've got to be dedicated, you've got to be passionate around what you're doing, you've got to have a good support network. I don't sit there and tell everyone. I'm not silly enough to think that what I achieved throughout my career was because simply of my mindset and my work ethic. Like, I was fortunate enough to have access to some great coaches who got the most out of me. Yeah, so talk about that. Being a continual learner and whatnot, that's a big thing too, as we talked about, constantly trying to improve and learn. So, yeah, those sorts of things that are applicable, and then I just use stories from my experience.
Yeah, does it have a working title yet, or not yet? And when you got a release date in mind?
Yeah, it does. I've got something in mind, but I'll just wait to see what the editor wants to do with it too. Sort of get their input and their feedback.
Yeah, well, definitely keep an eye on that. When it's out, I'll definitely push it out via Twitter. And what's the best way for people to get in contact with you if they want to explore your leadership work and that kind of stuff? Yeah.
LinkedIn, just Beau Robinson on LinkedIn, or an email, Beau Robinson at actioncoach, actioncoach.com. Yeah, so hopefully people know, some of the feedback, as you even said, has been good in terms of the articles and the videos that I'm putting up on LinkedIn, which is quite humbling when people reach out to you and say that. Yeah. They obviously have a rugby focus because that's my background too, so I think people often enjoy that perspective.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I love the LinkedIn photo with the half business suit, half Reds jersey. So definitely, I'll use that for the podcast episode too. That's wicked.
Good man, that'll be on the book. Don't worry about that.
Awesome. All right. Well, we always end the show with the same final four questions. When you were a kid growing up in Dubbo, who were some of the players that you really looked up to and got really excited about and got you interested in rugby?
Who did I say there? I wasn't a massive rugby. I watched a bit of it, mainly just the free-to-air stuff with the Wallabies. My rugby league family, my old man's a rugby league man. I enjoyed, Todai Kefu, who was pretty good.
Yeah.
I like watching Johnny Wilkinson.
Yeah.
Just thought he was pretty tough as a 5'8", particularly. He could do a bit of everything, and the bloke could kick, drop goals off both feet. I think that's pretty impressive. And just reading and watching about how determined and dedicated he was. Butch James, South African 5'8", just
another tough 10,
yeah, just another in that strange. They're probably the ones. And obviously there's a few things there, probably not necessarily individual players, but some of the moments with the rugby stuff that stick out for you. Ben Toon, actually, I like Ben Toon.
He's a beauty.
He was, for a bloke who he was one who could probably sort of, he wasn't better than Jonah Lomu, but you could sort of match it at that era, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was fantastic. Definitely. Underrated in terms, if you look at the Wallabies that are on that top tier, he should be talked about more, I feel.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think the fact that he got injured, came back, and wasn't as effective probably hurts him. That can often be the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about now? Who are some of the players you like watching going around?
To be honest, I haven't been watching a great deal of it. I'll probably watch more of the English Premiership. I just find it a bit more even.
Give me some names.
But even then, I haven't been. Joe Marler. I really like Joe Marler. He's just a bit of an angry man.
I like his commentary on box kicks.
And I was fortunate enough to be there with him, sort of thing, and he was good company. And just again, like the way he played, and Kyle Sinclair for a tight head, the bloke's got skills. And I always liked James Slipper too. He was just a bloke who I thought was, for a prop, the skills that he possessed were phenomenal.
He's been outstanding this season too.
Yeah, who else is there in the Wallabies that's pretty aggressive? I haven't seen much of this Wright, but I'm interested to see what he goes like.
Yeah. He had a good season with the Reds for sure. He won him a few games for sure with his breakdown presence.
Yeah, right.
And then you got the U20s captain. He's also with the Reds as well. He's an open side as well. I think it's McWright, Fraser McWright. I might be blowing this one, but he's also another beauty coming through as well.
Yeah, I don't think the issue is necessarily about developing these youngsters. It's about keeping them.
Absolutely, yeah.
And taking them to the next level, that's the hardest thing.
Yeah, no doubt, absolutely. And what about coaches who are some of the high-profile coaches you like what they're doing, whether you worked with them or not?
I'm interested to see where Matt Taylor, who looked after me
absolutely.
At the Reds, where he ends up. He's been he was assistant coach. He went from the Reds to over to Glasgow. Glasgow won the Pro 14 or the Pro 12, whatever it was back then.
Yeah.
Been doing some things with Scotland.
Yeah.
Hopefully see him back in Australia, and I'm interested to see how he goes when he steps up as a head coach. God, there's that many of them over there. You can't even remember who else is over there and what they're doing.
Yeah, I had Matt Taylor on the show, actually. He was fantastic.
The tattoo.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a beauty. And then he was... What I loved about him, too, was I flicked him a few emails afterwards about some questions I had, and then he was all about having a Skype chat and, trying to work through some stuff. So, yeah, fantastic.
And, he's a student of the game too, and coaching and leadership. I talked to him a bit on Instagram. He's like putting up photos of his bookshelf and just loves it, mate. And that's something that's, I think, integral to be a good leader. Is you've got to be passionate about what you're doing.
Yeah,
and he definitely is. I'm interested to see how Scotty Johnson goes with the director of rugby too. What impact that has on the Wallabies and Rugby Australia.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting one for sure. Yeah, I'm keen to see where that goes as well. And then last question: who are some grassroots coaches that you know and don't get the accolades of these coaches that you think are doing good work and need a bit of a shout out?
Professional environment there?
No, just plugging away, doing it for the love of the game. Out in Dubbo or Bathurst or whatever.
I'd tell you, I'd have to give a rap to all of the coaches in the competition. So we're in the competition. It's only got 6 teams, but I have been impressed with how these teams are coached out here. We've got some bloody good coaches. They've got great systems and structures out here. So I would say everyone at the moment that's in our competition is a bloody good coach and has done some good things. Like you expect bush football to be a bit of a throw around, but it's definitely not out here. So it's very surprising and great to see. And a lot of people are commenting on that too at the moment, just going how impressive it is to actually see these structures and how well they're playing.
That's great news, and really exciting. And it's so key for Australian rugby is to have a healthy New South Wales and Queensland country club scene for sure.
Yep, definitely.
Cool. All right, Beau, well, it's been great chatting with you, mate. Really enjoyed it. And I think you've provided listeners with a really interesting perspective from a player's point of view. And there's so much in this for coaches to take away from a leadership point of view, but also to think about players and how you're dealing with individual players and how it's not a one size fits all model. So yeah, appreciate you giving up your time, and thanks for coming on the show.
No, thank you for having me. I enjoyed talking rugby, coaching and leadership.
Awesome. Cheers, mate.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Coaches Corner podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a review via iTunes and keep listening for the next episode. You can also follow us via Twitter at Rugby Coaches CNR or via the website therugbycoachescorner.com. Until next time, Keep sharing ideas to make the game